welcome everybody back to the ATB NFL live show. Last show of this season, at least as far as what's going on with this season. We have the Super Bowl tomorrow, about 31-ish hours away. We'll be having that start here. Chiefs, Eagles, really fun matchup. Kind of what I expected. I think what a lot of us expected as well for the most part. No surprise that these two teams are meeting each other. It's going to be the Kelsey Bowl, of course, the Andy Reid Bowl, whatever you want to call it as well. Going to be a lot of fun with that. But before we get into the game, because we're going to spend a lot of time on that, it's the only game of the week, so we can spend a lot of time on that one. Do want to talk about some stuff going on in the NFL that has happened since we last met. A lot of coaching stuff, some quarterback news, both from someone not playing anymore and someone who's trying to figure out where they're going to play next. So we'll get into that. But first thing, we have some big coaching hires that have happened since the last show, like I said. Let's start with probably, I guess we'll say the biggest one just because of who it is and the team and the situation. Sean Payton, now a Denver Bronco head coach. What do you guys think about that? I'm going to hit with Zach here first.
So I guess it will be interesting to see what happens with the offense. Because granted, Drew Brees was the short quarterback. But we've watched Russell Wilson not really be able to do the things that are asked in a Sean Payton system. It's going to be interesting. I do kind of like the fact that they have met so soon and actually met in person and sat down. Because there were some like weird comments when he was brought in, like, oh, he won't have his own staff and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, oh, getting off on a weird foot right from the start. But it looks like they've come together and like there's no issues. I didn't think there would be because Sean Payton is very well respected around the league. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Denver has pieces. It just didn't work last year. And whether it was solely because Russell Wilson is not it, or maybe Nathaniel Hackett was really just he wasn't ready and his system is not prone to whatever. I don't know. But I mean, there is a theme right now of offensive coordinators kind of latching on to like very, very, very high profile quarterbacks. And people assume that the success is a direct result of the coordinator. And then we see pretty quickly, No,
I call that the Manning effect.
Yes. And thank you for that jab there. That I appreciate.
Adam Gase,
that
anybody
yes,
interested in
yes.
that? Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be better than Joe Philbin, right?
Well, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. It's a weird fit. It was going to be blockbuster because it's the Denver Broncos, and you had to bring in a big name, but I don't know.
I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you for the most part, Zach. But Tony, what do you think about this one? Add anything there?
Yeah. So I mean, in our last show, I was pretty adamant about how bad of a fit this would be, and it ultimately came to pass. Crazy that so in a vacuum, Sean Payton, great coach. Russell Wilson, accomplished quarterback. There might be something salvageable there. Their styles don't mesh. What the path to this working is Russell Wilson for the first time in his life changing his style, not being the center of attention, not doing everything he wants. And I think Sean Payton started off on the wrong foot by saying, oh yeah, no, he's not allowed to have his own personal coach in the locker room. That shit's not happening under me. I think that's smart because you need somebody who's going to push back on Russell Wilson. You need somebody who's going to put him in his place and say, hey, you can be a really good quarterback if you do these things. I'm successful. I've done it before. I know it works, but you have to listen. And so now it all depends on Russell Wilson just listening. So that could work great. But at the end of the day, you have now sunk so many picks and players and money into Russell Wilson.
Yes. And Sean Payton.
And now you have sunk so many picks into Sean Payton. And now the money there doesn't matter. It's the Walmart family. They print money. They don't care. They just hand the guy a 5-year, $100 million contract and say, good day. Like, they don't care about the money with the Sean Payton's part. But you've sunk all of this capital into a thing that probably isn't going to work. It's not going to get you over Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's probably not even going to get you over the Chargers. They have gone all in on something that has a very low probability of working. And I don't really see a path to success here. It doesn't make sense. I honestly think, like, if you're going to try to bring in the offensive guy to turn things around and make it work with Russell Wilson, you could have done that without spending the picks. You could have just hired Shane Steichen and hoped for the best because they both have the same chance of working out. So I still think it's a pretty dumb move, but here we are in the world, and hopefully it worked out because more exciting teams is better for football, but I just don't really see it.
Yeah, I think the ultimate problem here is, and you kind of touched on it, Tony, is Sean Payton's going to have to adjust what he does and what he's done in the past if he wants to maximize Russell Wilson, right? At this point, he's not a young player. He's not going to completely change the type of player he is. We saw what happened when they tried to do that with Hackett. He just isn't that type of player. He's not going to run a pure passing offense where he sits in the pocket, throws in the middle of the field. Like, he's just not going to do that. And I think that forcing him to do that was a mistake. But it also, I think, in the future for Payton, he has to look at this and go, okay, how can I incorporate some of the stuff that I want to do and make Russell Wilson comfortable doing so? And then we can maybe see what we can do with him for the long haul with this contract, because that has to be the priority, is making sure that contract does not become an albatross on their chances of competing. And I think bringing Sean Payton makes sense from the perspective of, I think he'll garner respect from Russell Wilson, right? This is a guy who's won Super Bowl, had some of the best offenses in NFL history. Like, he has done this for a long time. And I think that relationship working out is going to ultimately determine how well this goes. But because of how much money and picks they've sunk into this, kind of like what the Rams had to do to make what they did make sense, they have to win a title. If they do not win a title with Russell Wilson as the quarterback and Payton as head coach, it is an abject failure no matter what else happens. And that's what's so hard. Yeah, it is so hard when you put yourself in that corner of, like, we did all these things, we made all these moves, like, that's great. If you don't win a title, when you sink this much capital into just 2 people, really, at the end of the day, it's going to be a failure if you don't win a title. And you said, Tony, how are they going to be able to get past the Chiefs? If the coaching for the Chargers can get out of its own way in the offensive coordinator situation, which is better now with Kellen Moore, are they going to be able to get past the Chargers? Honestly, even the Raiders, like, if they do the right thing at quarterback, if they make the right moves and McDaniels can get out of his own way for 2 minutes, they might even be better than the Broncos in certain situations. Like, it's not going to be easy to do it. And is it possible? Sure, because anything's possible. I just don't know if it's going to be within that time frame they have to kind of make this work. And I feel like in 3 or 4 years, you're going to be hitting the reset button real hard again. So, and it sucks for that young defense that's really good too. Like, they're going to be the ones that kind of really take the brunt of this. And, yeah, I mean, they have Judy, Sutton, like, all those guys can play. And it's going to suck if it kind of comes crashing down just because of those 2 moves. So
Williams tore his ACL, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and he'll be back.
He tore a lot of things. Yeah, he got the whole J.K. Dobbins. It was
he'll be back, but still, it's like,
I mean, he'll be back, but like it sucks for a player like that who's sitting there on the offense. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm literally going out there every week, and we're gonna roll out something that probably doesn't have a high chance of success. Like, why am I putting myself on the line?
I'm going to waste his whole first contract if things don't go well.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's both Wilson and Payton have to meet halfway, or else they're literally going to be the Nets of the NFL.
Yeah. So, that one, I mean, I get, like, it's Sean Payton. It is what it is. I get it, but, like, it's just, again, you put so much pressure on this team to make it happen within the next couple of years, and it's just going to be a hard sell to do that. I mean,
so I guess how much leash do you give Russell Wilson before this becomes an Albert Hainsworth situation?
Yeah. Oh, that's a name you don't want to invoke here. Moving on to probably the second biggest head coach news for sure. D'Amico Ryans, head coach of the Texans.
I'd argue that this is bigger because this was the domino that caused,
I think it's a
Broncos
it's a better move, but I think that it's like, you're talking about Sean Payton getting
from what I've read and heard, the Houston Texans hiring Ryans, Denver wanted Ryans, like they were all in. And then that pushed them to then go back to be like, okay, well, we have to go get Sean.
Yeah, I guess we'll get
and he was hired, and Ryans was hired first. So that was like the big domino that fell here. And I was just like, got to strike when the iron's hot.
Yeah, and the Texans get a guy that, again, we talked about it last week, and I know Tony had a different opinion than me and Zach to a certain degree, but it was mostly because of our just apprehension about the way the Texans have done business over the past few years. But based on the way the contract is structured, based on the way things look, and like he seems like he's going to have a lot of control over what's going on here, I do think that this was this is definitely a great move for the Texans, but I think it's also a really solid move for Ryanson's first chance to be a head coach. I think there's definitely a chance for success here. Curious to see how he wants to build this team out. Is he going to try to emulate the Niners a little too much because we've seen teams do that where it doesn't really work out that way. But I think he seems like a guy who understands like there's certain things he can take from what he learned while being with the Niners, but he's not going to try to truly replicate everything that they're doing. And I think that's going to be smart. But let's go to Tony for this one first. What do you think about it overall? I know you were a big fan of it, the idea of it. So what do you think on this one?
Yeah, I'm still riding the high from that one. I think this is a perfect hire. I think this was the best landing spot for a prospective head coach, and I think this was the best head coach on the market. Just a perfect marriage. DeMeco now gets to go into the place that he once played, a place that he loves, and build it. Because right now they have assets. They don't really have much of a foundation. They've got a couple players, but they've got assets and a chance to build. And now he gets to just build this in his image. Like you said, he's not going to copy paste everything he did from San Francisco because you need Nick Bosa's, you need Fred Warner's. Those don't grow on trees. But he is going to, and what he has always done is he's going to take the personnel he has and put them in the best position to succeed. And then he also is going to have creative influence on who they are drafting, who they are trading for, who they are signing, how they are building this thing from the ground up. And he will be able to guide those decisions along the way, understand how he's going to use players before they acquire them. It's going to be beautiful. Offensive side of the ball, I think he's going to hand that off to somebody with experience. It's sounding like it's going to be Cliff Kingsbury. Apprehensions there, understandable. He didn't do well in Arizona. He didn't do well at Texas Tech. But the one thing he does do well is work with that style of quarterback and get them to a satisfactory level. Not get them over the top, but get them to a level where you're like, all right, this guy can play. And if 3 years from now, the offense, probably with Bryce Young, I imagine if that's the hire, the offense starts to like plateau, then yeah, you upgrade. But he's the perfect guy to come in for these next 2 to 3 years and try to coach him up to be a competent NFL starter. So just all across the board, flowers to DeMeco Ryans, flowers to the Texans. This is going to work.
What do you think, Zach? Want to add anything?
Yeah, they also hired Matt Burke as defensive coordinator.
Yes.
So I think that's an interesting hire. I think the one thing that you said, Tony, is a bigger thing about this crop of San Francisco Kyle Shanahan tree quarterbacks. Yeah, they might try to emulate the San Francisco style or like the system that they run over there, but it's more about the fact that all of them seem to know how to maximize the most of all their players. I mean, you've got look at Mike McDaniel in Miami this year. Yeah, you had your big names, but you also had guys like Trent Sherfield and River Craycraft and Cater Kohu and all these guys who like you're like, oh, who are they? And they they just put them in those positions to do the most. And DeMeco Ryans has shown that with the defense because like you said, there's not all Nick Bosa's and Fred Warner's. I mean, that's only 2 of 11 players on the field. He still has to turn.
They make up like 4.5 on a traditional roster.
Well, I mean, they do. But then he's also got 9 other dogs out there too, because they're all going hard as hell. And like, it doesn't matter if they were drafted in the 1st round or the 7th round. All these guys in San Francisco under Kyle Shanahan know how to coach. And like, yes, the systems might not be running perfectly, but that's just necessarily because they haven't gotten their like whole foundation yet. And I'm excited to see what happens with this tree as they all start to fill out their rosters and all start to build up. Cause I think we finally got a big defensive coach hire that everybody's like super, super, super hyped about. And this is the swing that we need because San Francisco's defense was shutting down these crazy offenses that we've been seeing the past few years. And that's the only thing that's going to change the game right now because we need a little bit of a swing here. It's gotten a bit too offensive recently. And I would like to see some like defensive prowess for like at least a couple more than like 1 or 2 teams.
Yeah, whenever Sean McDermott was the only playoff head coach that had like a defensive background, it's pretty tough, But still some really great defenses in the playoffs, just not from a coaching perspective. But yeah, I do hope that Ryans does work out. I just want to see the Texans not be bad. Like I'm just tired of like teams like them. Like the only team, and it's mostly because of a certain decision they made that I really want to see stay bad is the Browns. Every other team I'd like to be good at some point. Just because it makes the sport better when the stuff like that happens. Like the Jaguars making the playoffs this year, awesome. If the Texans can do something similar to that, probably not next year, but within the next 2 years or so, that's really big for the sport. Like, you get some of these teams that have been down in the dumps for the past few years or longer in some cases, and you get them in the playoffs. That's really nice to see. So I hope that those work out. I do think there's a much higher chance of it working out than maybe it would have based on their past history with this stuff with coaches. But definitely gonna be fun to see what what he can do. I want to see what he does do at quarterback and what that front office decides to do, because like you said, Tony, if they are going to hire a guy like Kingsbury, probably Bryce Young is what they're looking at there. I think Stroud could run an air raid system pretty easily too, but I don't think he has the same style of play that they probably would want with that offense. Young has more of the mobility aspect and crazy stuff he'll do in the pocket, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the draft for sure, kind of see what direction they go with some of these picks. So
I think it's interesting because right now you've got a lot of teams who have never been to the Super Bowl and never won a Super Bowl and not really either had much playoff success, really starting to lay down some like fantastic like foundations and ground roots. Lions, Jaguars, Texans. I mean, the Titans, if they can figure out their quarterback situation, they've been solid for the past few years. Mike Vrabel is a fantastic coach. The Chargers, Panthers, Falcons, Bengals are here. Bills. The only 2-3 couple on here that I'm like the Cardinals, because they just haven't like there's no direction right now. The Browns because of the same decision.
It's the Browns,
and the Vikings, because I think their prime their time has passed until
they're also just cursed as hell.
Yeah. So well, I mean, until they pass on Kirk Cousins and realize that this is not going to happen, that I just can't. I can't give them any more than I can give them right now. It's just not. I mean, their defense isn't doing them any favors, but it's Kirk Cousins.
Fair enough. Speaking of Vikings defense, new defensive coordinator. Unfortunately, a loss for my team. Brian Flores, linebackers coach for the Steelers, moves on to the Vikings. I expected him to get some sort of job this offseason. There was some rumors that maybe he was going to wait till next year. He was at the Senior Bowl for us and stuff like that, but eventually the Vikings decided to make him an offer. Definitely think it's a good move for the Vikings. He is what he does well, is if he can stay on the defense side of the ball and handle that, I think he's going to be really good for them. But it does suck for my Steelers a little bit, because I was kind of hoping that in case Terrell Austin doesn't work out next year, even though he had a solid first year, considering injuries and everything else for us, that maybe Flores could jump into that role. But what do you guys think of that hire from Minnesota? Do you think it helps push them at least closer to the direction they need to go defensively to actually, build a team that can compete in the playoffs, opposed to getting beat by the Giants? Let's go back to Tony on this one.
Yeah, so I like the hire a lot. I don't know. They're going to stick with this roster. They're going to try to cash in on a competitive window. They're not going to reset at quarterback. They're going to say like, hey, if we just get a little bit better elsewhere on the defensive side, specifically on the defensive run game side, then maybe we'll win a playoff game, and then you just never know what happens. Yeah. So I think hiring Brian Flores was awesome. I know he was in contention for head coaching positions, and Arizona, I honestly think for the longevity of his coaching career, this actually makes a lot of sense for him too, because one thing about Brian Flores is he burnt some bridges with whatever happened in Miami, whether it's his fault or not. Bridges were burnt, and he doesn't really have any offensive coaching people background or anything tied to him. He had no well to dip into. If he gets hired as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, what does he do at offensive coordinator? He doesn't have a relationship with any tree that really makes sense.
Yeah.
So what he's doing now is he's going to coach up a defense in Minnesota, be on a competitive roster, and most importantly, attach himself now to that Sean McVay tree with Kevin O'Connell, who appears to be a great offensive mind, great coach. He's now going to be tapped into that well. So when he ultimately does get that next head coaching job, and he deserves it. He will get that. Now he will be able to pull in from that offensive tree, from relationships he has there, and it'll just make his tenure in his next role so much stronger. So I think this is great for him. I think it's great for the Vikings. Just a really well played out hiring cycle for both parties.
What do you think, Zach?
Yeah. So look, Brian Flores is a good head coach. Unfortunately, he went to a franchise where him and the owner had two very, very, very different ideas of what they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And that's not his fault, because even though he's not as bad, Stephen Ross is still a little wonky. And like the decisions that they have made over the course of the times that he has I think I've touched on it. Like the fact that they have never done a full teardown rebuild has really just plagued that organization. So like Brian Flores was kind of walking into something that not necessarily has had a lot of success. Seeing what McDaniel's doing right now is kind of good, but that's a little bit different. I also think it's kind of ironic that we're talking about Brian Flores and he has no well of offensive like coaching to tap into. And that's because his predecessor, his disciple, or not disciple, his prophet,
Mentor,
I guess
yeah,
is where
mentor,
we
you
would
can say.
mentor. Bill Belichick doesn't have one either, which is ironic when we're looking at him being one of the best coaches in the NFL of all time. And it's just like, man, was Josh McDaniel really that like, man, that's it? So I do agree that this is a good stepping stone because this is going to be his point to prove like, look, I was the only linebacker at Pittsburgh. I can only do so much. But I have a chance to improve a very, very bad unit. But there are plenty of other franchises where he could go to and get along just fine with the ownership and just fine with the front office. And the man had one of the best defenses in the NFL. Like there's no denying that. So that's another person who, like, unfortunately the offense didn't work out, but depending on the team you send him to, I mean, you might be able to. So like establishing that credibility with another team. And I mean, arguably you have two now because he went to Pittsburgh and now he's going to Minnesota. That's going to be great. But Brian Flores absolutely 100% deserves another shot. There's just no way that relationship in Miami could continue for both parties. And they had to separate. I mean, we have seen what happened in the aftermath, and like that had to die.
Yeah, I do think I agree with you with the whole Miami situation. Like it's going to be looked on poorly for a long time just because of all the crazy reports that came out and all the different stuff. But like at the end of the day, he was given a bad hand, and we all knew it when he got hired, even realistically, and it just ended up going bad for a different reason.
Yeah,
right.
And
just the team being bad.
And say what you want about how he ended up handling the quarterback situation, but even that was not something he was going to ever be prepared for. Because when did the Patriots ever deal with that? Bringing in a rookie quarterback coming off of a life-threatening injury, and you have a stop-back quarterback who has been a journeyman for his entire career, and you have to be the one to determine, all right, it's the rookie's time now. When you've never had any offensive advice ever. That like he got handed one of the worst, like it was like everybody's like, oh, this is a great hire, this is great, and defensively it worked, but the rest of it was a mess because the Dolphins offense has been a mess for forever.
Yeah, but
talk about the team that really that revolutionized the Wildcat because they couldn't do anything else.
Yeah. Good old Chad Pennington years, right? I will say with Flores too, like you mentioned it, he doesn't have a leg up in terms of, like you guys said, the coaching to pull from as far as offensive coaching. And that's what ultimately kind of, I think from a coaching standpoint, even if the stuff with the owner didn't happen, that was what would have eventually spelled his end with Miami no matter what, is he just didn't have, an offensive identity that he wanted to establish through his coaching. And even when you mentioned the quarterback situation, like, yeah, that's tough because it's really hard to tell when a guy, unless a guy is like truly like generational talented, like unbelievable, it's really hard to know when a guy is ready to go. And he even saw it with Pittsburgh this year. Like if Pittsburgh had started Kenny Pickett from week one, guess what? We're probably a playoff team. We just like Trubisky was not it. He wasn't going to be it. And I even said, like, if Trubisky's even just barely beating him out in camp, that's not good enough. That's when like Pickett needs to play. And we saw, and Flores got to see, like, yeah, we probably would have been in the playoffs, because imagine that Jets game where like we almost won still with him throwing 3 picks in the second half of the game. Like,
what about all the news this week about the Jets game?
Well, that apparently that was falsely claimed by whoever said it. They came out and said that it was falsely claimed, or they mischaracterized the situation with what they said. Do I believe that Deontay flipped the fuck out on him?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I would have too, because he had 0 fantasy production this year after being a boon the past few seasons.
Granted, that's mostly Matt Canada's fault, but that's another conversation for another day. We'll talk about that, not in the Super Bowl.
I was gonna make a little joke here regarding the offensive patterns for both Belichick and Flores, but we saw Flores do the telltale thing of when a coach leaves and goes to another team where they just poach the So do you think that when he was like, oh no, I gotta get rid of Joe Judge. He was like, yeah, what if I take Flores's idea and just do the two coordinator? That has to work, right? Like, I got nothing else.
Man, I don't even know what to make of the Patriots at this point, but that's beside the point. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that's going to be a good hire for Minnesota for sure. Really,
Yes.
the only other news I want to touch on real quick before we jump into our last topic before we get into the game. Colts have, I guess, narrowed it down to a few guys. You know, Saturday's still in there. I think Shane Steichen, Philly's offensive coordinator, so we'll get to see more of him here tomorrow. Raheem Morris apparently also finalist from what I've been able to see. Very interesting names. I think Steichen, if you're just looking at it from like a fresh offensive mind, you're going to get a new quarterback in there, hopefully. Swear, if they do not draft a quarterback, or at least like early. But if they go that route, that would make a lot of sense. I think Raheem Morris, as kind of the more like experienced leadership guy and an offensive coordinator that has a good track record developing quarterbacks, you know, maybe a Pep Hamilton reunion. I know with him on the market now, like that might make sense. That also I think would be a good fit, but I think we both know, and I'll ask you guys about like there's the fact that one of these guys is still in this race kind of makes I think all of us a little uneasy. But what do you think about this, Zach? For them?
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about this is until the day I read a headline that says Indianapolis Colts have hired name other than Jeff Saturday, my mind has been made up that Jeff Saturday is getting this job because there's no reason he should still be in the process.
Right.
Like,
there's learn enough.
There's nothing that we saw over the end of the season from when he took over to be like, yeah, let's do this. And if we're being honest, Frank Reich should probably still be there. It just
I mean, realistically, that's
like, I don't think that was the person to get rid of, but that's just me. But this is again, Jim Irsay. I'm never going to claim I understand what any NFL owner knows, but there's two in particular that I definitely don't know what they're thinking, and that is Jim Irsay and Daniel Snyder. And you can never ask me that. Like I like I said, until I see that they have hired somebody else, it's Jeff Saturday in my mind because he's just not out of it yet, and I just can't get over the fact that nepotism is rampant in the NFL.
Chris Ballard just needs to sit Jim Irsay down in the film room and be like, I'm going to play you the Vikings game from this year. And I want you
not even that. Yeah. Chris Ballard needs to sit him down in the film room and say, hey, do you actually know anything about football? Can you please just butt out?
Yeah, I think that's we're past that at this point.
I know, but this is what plagues these teams is you get owners who are just way too overzealous when in reality, they just need to hand it over to somebody else. I mean, it's a bad example, but the Giants ended up having to do it because it tore their family apart. Literally, literally, they end up, but like they had to turn it over. And you've just seen countless times where when the owners just worry about the financials and just doing all that stuff and just let the front office and the people that know what they're doing take over, you win. Like, it's not, I don't know why. I mean, I get it. Like Daniel Snyder, that's all he has. He's the owner of the Redskins. What else? Of the Commanders. Good Lord. That's way too prevalent down here. Like people refuse to call them the Commanders. It's awful. I hate it. Like literally everybody I work with will not say it. I'm just like, yo, guys, please. Like we don't have to do this.
Cry about it more, guys. No, I get what you're saying, Zach. Like it's just until Saturday is no longer in the running, and I think Tony, you probably agree with this. Like you could definitely add on to it, but his name being involved there, it makes me feel like Irsay's just gonna be like, listen, you these other candidates, they're great and all, but
I love
Jeff Saturday's here. Like you guys remember him? Like he was great for us. Like maybe not last year, but before that. Like it's just that's what I think's going on, and I hate it. I think it was dumb to begin with, and it's going to be extra. Like if he doubles down on this, it's just horrendous. Like I don't know what else to say about it other than that. So what do you think, Tony? Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, so I do want to. You guys made a point about like, oh man, if the owner just takes the back seat and worries about the financials, that's how it should work. But goddamn, if I'm a billionaire and I own a football team,
so that's a problem.
My ignorant ass is going to be involved in every decision.
But how many sports writers and people who actually make content about football are billionaires that own football teams? That I agree with you there because I would be doing the same thing. But like we have people who like you said, own Walmart. They don't know anything about football. Like,
yeah, but
and-
like
and-
I would happily make like just terrible decision after terrible decision
At
because
least
I can
at least
like,
with us, like we would be a step above what Ursay is doing. I think.
here's my
fair.
next 10.
Just 'cause
Here's my
we-
next 10
we
years
pay
first round
attention
draft
to
picks for
stuff.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Give me him.
Yeah, and they'd be like,
maybe that's why
no.
we're not all billionaires.
probably,
But,
that's
yeah,
probably
so no,
contributing to it. Yeah.
back to what I actually think about their hiring process. One thing I keep like, because that fear is there. The fear of Jeff Saturday being the head football coach of
Just
the Indianapolis
looming
Colts
over
is
everybody,
there.
just-
The one thing I keep coming back to that is giving me hope in this process is that if you have a guy who you know on a deeply personal level, who you hang out with, you have beers with, you then watch him coach and interact with your football team for what was it, like 8 weeks?
I think
You then go on a 6-week head coaching hunt where you are interviewing everybody under the sun. If you
Actual head
haven't
coaching
decided
candidates.
that guy is worth the job, then you're probably at a point where you're like, he's not worth the job, but like, I'm just going to keep on saying he's in it until I hire a guy. Like, I just can't imagine having that large of a sample size to evaluate this guy and still not being comfortable deciding to hire him. Like, at a certain point, if Jim Irsay is going to do this stupid thing, he probably would have done it by now. So I'm thinking that it's kind of just, it's his buddy. He's not going to eliminate him from the race because why not? Why not keep his name in the cycle longer? And he's just going to hire Shane Steichen at the end of the day. Like that is what I'm holding on to. Is just that like Jim Irsay loves this guy so much. Why hasn't he hired him yet? And I think it's because he's waiting for Steichen.
But Tony, he's only had an 8-game career. That's not
Yeah.
an
Not enough
accurate
to
sample
evaluate him.
size.
Yeah,
Come
you can't
on.
evaluate him.
Hey, he just had a bad run. He's in the Colts Ring of Honor. He's got to be good for Indianapolis. Come on.
If they hire him as the head coach and he bombs as hard as he did as the interim, do they remove him from?
They
the
might
Ring
have.
of
They
Honor?
might have to take him out. Yeah, they might have to like start.
well,
Jeff, listen,
I think maybe not because
Yeah.
he was put in there as a center and not a head coach. So.
Yeah, but I mean, his name's still up there, and everyone's like, "Oh, I remember." Everyone's like, "Oh, I remember Jeff Saturday. He was pretty good, but also he like lost his 3 consecutive seasons."
But
basically.
whose fault would that be? Not Jeff Saturday's,
Technically,
Jim
it would be
Irsay's.
Jim Irsay's. Yeah, get his.
I've seen enough of Jeff Saturday to
is he
assume a lot
supposed
of
to
it is
say
his
no
fault, too.
to the money? Like, is he just supposed to be like, "Oh, you're
Well,
offering
that's
me
the thing
millions
is, like,
of dollars"?
I still do not blame Saturday whatsoever for taking
No.
the job. That's not the problem. It's the fact it was offered to him, right? Like that.
Yeah,
that's
no.
what this issue comes from.
I always get down to that when with all these coaching decisions. I always get down to that. Look, say what you want about the actual hire, but you can't blame the guy that got the job.
No,
All the ire has to be put on the people that did the interviews and hired them, because at the end of the day, just like anybody else watching this, anybody else getting up this morning, if Jim Irsay called you up and said, "Hey, I want to give you a 4-year, $60 million contract to come coach the Indianapolis Colts," you're going to say yes.
Yeah, like,
because
I'll be there tomorrow.
you don't have $60 million right now, and you want $60 million right now.
Yeah,
So like,
about it.
that's what's so weird about this is like, you can't fault them for taking the job, but you also could sit here and be like, yeah, no, you just shouldn't have taken that job because you don't know what you're doing. This is a waste of time.
Yeah, see, y'all don't understand. I'm not criticizing him for taking
Oh,
the
no,
job.
no.
Oh,
I'm
no,
saying
yeah.
If he takes the job and crashes and burns, it's
Oh,
on him
yeah.
because I have heard him speak. I
Yes.
understand his philosophies in football. I understand that he said, "Oh yeah, I'm an offensive lineman. I'm always going to take the points. I'm never going to go for it on 4th down." I'm like, you belong in the 60s, sir. Like if you take that job, you are still on the hook for your performance. Like,
Oh, yeah,
and
for
the
sure,
fact
but-
that he's spitting in the face of modern football, that's where I'm like, yeah, this is his fault too.
I'm so conflicted on this because like I kind of agree with you, but I also think that taking the points is almost always demonized, but like it's never demonized when somebody does like the quote unquote analytics thing and it fucks up. Like, and like nobody ever is like, "Oh, the analytics steered you wrong." And when like
Yeah,
at the
I'm
end
saying
of the day,
like
you're like,
kicking a
"Oh,
field
3
goal down 14 with 2 minutes left. Like,
well,
he's
yeah,
that guy.
but like then, but you got like situations where at the end of the game, you ended up being short like 1 or 2 points. You're like, "Oh, if they kick the field goal there instead of going for it on 4th down, you win the game."
Well, yeah,
because,
but there's
like,
still situational
but
awareness.
but that's I there's been a really weird trend where like, and maybe not necessarily in coaching, but especially in fandom where it's become analytics over everything. And we have to remember that situational. You cannot be analytics over everything because your environment plays a big factor, and the environment doesn't give a crap about analytics because
Okay,
the
whoa,
environment can
All right,
change.
we could get on a real tangent here, but let's remember
Yeah.
what analytics is. Analytics is just taking what has happened in the past and telling you what is likely to happen in that situation. Analytics does not mean going for it every time. Analytics
I
will
know.
tell you, it'll tell you to kick the field goal when that leads to an increase in win probability. If your goal is trying to keep games close so that you can look good after you lose, then you do the Jeff Saturday thing. If your goal is to win, you're probably going to lose by more. Like it's a double-edged sword. But so Jeff Saturday is conservative on every single decision. There's no nuance to it. It is, what is the most conservative thing I can do? That is what I will do. It's never like situationally what makes sense to do right now.
Yeah.
And analytics is situationally what makes sense to do right now.
I guess more so my point that I didn't point off there was that whenever we talk about or the analytics, it's just like blanket, but we never think about the roster. And I think like sometimes we get like these like really, really bad teams. They're like, oh, why didn't they go for it? It's like, do you expect them to do anything with it? They weren't like, this is their chance to score. Like, so I think like for teams like the Chiefs and like your top dogs, like, oh yeah, no, like the analytics, those decisions make sense. But I think there's like at some point when you go down on like the hierarchy of NFL teams from like best to worst, there's probably a cutoff point where they're like, yeah, I understand that's like, that's probably the analytical thing to do, but you know, these guys don't have the best fundamentals, and that's what we're trying to hammer in at this point.
Then forfeit the game if you're not going to try to win. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, obviously, but like, you're not telling me that scoring points isn't trying to win. I mean, scoring points is trying to win.
The scenario I said, if you are down 14 points, 2 minutes left, and you kick a field goal, you are intentionally forfeiting. There is no hope for you if you do this thing. Your one path to victory is doing the thing that could look really, really bad if it goes wrong. And it's probably going to go wrong, but your one path to victory, your Doctor Strange 1 in 14 million, whatever the hell scenario, that you have to be willing to look bad because you're trying to win. You can't just try to continue the game longer so that you don't get fired after a bet. Like, you can't guarantee a loss just because you don't want to lose by a lot.
But I mean, that's where we get into these coaching things. And I mean, eye test is a big thing. I mean, if you make a loss look a bit more respectable, that could go a long way with saving your job.
Well, that's the problem. That's the fault.
I don't give a shit about that. I want to win football.
Well, but we're humans, so like that's I mean that's where all this runs. It's like analytics kind of totally eliminates the human factor is always going to be the biggest thing in all of it, because like you can't control what people are going to do because anybody can do anything at any point. So
yeah.
You could hammer in all day like, oh yes, this is what you do, this is what you do, and even the coach could be like, yeah, we're doing this, but then like the quarterback could be like, nah, screw that, let's do this instead. So like I get it, but like
we'll save the analytics discussion for
that'll be a great off-season show.
So anyway, what I want to get into before we get into the show, to the actual like Super Bowl, obviously that's the biggest topic. I do want to talk about two quarterbacks, one who no longer is playing and one who's trying to figure out where he's going to play next. I want to start just by acknowledging the fact that even though when Tom Brady retired last year, it was like, oh, you know what, and then he comes back, he's retiring this year. He has filed paperwork to the NFLPA, so that it should mean theoretically that he will not be returning to the NFL in any capacity other than as broadcaster after, I guess, this year. I think he says taking off a year and then going back. We kind of, I mean, I wasn't actually worried about him coming back, so it's not really big news to me. But the fact he actually filed it, and also JJ Watt had a fun comment on that when he's like, "Oh, I didn't know there's paperwork. I'm not doing that, but I'm definitely retired." So that was fun. Honestly, not huge news, but just kind of wanted to throw that out there. You know, we'll talk about Tom Brady probably more in the offseason, legacy stuff like that if we want to get into that. But Derek Carr has this Wednesday coming up is the deadline to figure out, okay, what is his deal going to be? Is he going to be cut? Is he going to be traded? What team is he going to? All that good stuff. So far, just visited with, I believe, just the Saints. I think it's the only team he's talked to, which, I mean, the Saints, I guess they need help quarterback, and they don't really have many ways to get it. But still, it's like
at this point, throw Taysom Hill out there. I mean, you've got
I mean, they've been trying to for years, so might as well. But
hey, it's the only time they were good this year.
Fair enough. Adrian, what do you guys? I'm going to start with Tony here. What do you think the best place for Carr to go, and then do you think that he can have success again somewhere else, even though the end of the season with the Raiders kind of obviously puts a stink on his career there?
Yeah, I think he's a perfectly serviceable top half of the league quarterback. I think the issue is when those guys get paid $40 million a year, what that does to the rest of your roster makes it really hard to win. So do I think like he'll ever be a top 10 Super Bowl favorite wherever he goes? No, but I think there's places he could go and have relative success. Like the team that I think it makes the most sense and in the same division is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they've already got the structure built for like a compete now kind of window. They're pretty overextended on the cap and everything, and they'll have to make some decisions, but so are the Saints. I just think the structure, the weapons, depending on who they bring in as play caller, obviously matters a lot. But I think that's like a good solid location. You know, he can kind of go be quiet in Tampa Bay, make that tax-free money still. Just ride out the rest of his career without looking horrific. The Saints thing, man, that would be an absolute disaster. Like the Saints are in cap hell and they need to just reset. They can make the room to bring in Derek Carr and on his current contract. But what would that do? You would be in the same exact spot. You're not competing for shit. This is what I was just saying about analytics, where like, yes, technically, if you kick the field goal, you are in the game longer. You have extended the timeline before you lose, but you're still never going to win. You've already guaranteed your loss. That is the Derek Carr to the Saints right there. Technically, you are appearing as though you are trying to win, but you are doing things that directly go against the opportunity to win. Instead of resetting and entering your new competitive window earlier, you're extending the current thing where like, you might sneak in and win your division because it sucks at 9-8 and you're going to get bounced in the first round. You are it's posturing. They're not trying to win. They're posturing. That is what the Derek Carr to the Saints move would be. So I think it'd be terrible, but we just talked about it. The NFL loves appearing to try to win instead of actually trying to win. So they'll probably do it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I think the Saints, again, they're just in the situation where they need to decide at some point, like you said, Tony, that like, you know what, we're not doing this crap anymore. We're getting rid of all the bad contracts. We're resetting the roster. Will be bad, really, really, truly bad for a couple years. But then after that, maybe we have a chance to kind of rebuild this thing and start fresh. And I think that a lot of teams have waited too long to do that in the past, and we've seen how that affects them. Saints definitely no different there. I would like to see them not continue to kick the can down the road, per se. But wouldn't be surprised if they do try to make this happen. But anything you want to add to that, Zach? Any other destinations, maybe?
Well, so regarding the Saints, it's really only a couple bad contracts if you look at the way that their money's stretched out.
Yeah,
because they paid stupid players too much money, and like the rest of the people are aptly like valued because they do have talent on their roster. They do.
Yeah,
and
it's not enough to overcome certain things.
Well, so my thing that I would say is, if you throw the contracts out and you picked up Derek Carr and put him on the Saints this year, they would be vastly better than they were, because that defense was firing on all cylinders, and the offense just needed somebody who could accurately throw a football. And like,
they still go 8-9.
I don't know. They have weapons. I mean, they have Chris Olave. The wide receiver core, despite being or having what they had, was vastly unproven coming into the season, and they were a lot better than they have been the past few seasons, despite being in quarterback hell. Alvin Kamara kind of bounced back a little bit, but again, you don't have somebody who can move the football. They have the weapons, they just don't have somebody who can do anything with their offense. And the offensive line, they lost Terron Armstead, but the rest of the offensive line was solid as well. They have talent around. It's just that Michael Thomas contract is horrific, and that Taysom Hill contract is horrific and taking up way too much space that you need to put in other areas of your team. So that's where, like, if you look at some of these other bloated contracts, if they are able to shed those, then possibly. But again, you're running out of the time with your defense because they're getting old, and you can't do anything. An interesting destination that I would like to see, but I know won't happen because they've already said they're going to go with somebody else. I think he would be great in Washington. But they've already said Sam Howell is going to be the Commanders quarterback. And I mean, it's interesting. I know, but given the sale of the team upcoming, I don't think, and given Snyder's reputation, I don't think he would want to do something as crazy as like some blockbuster trade or something like that would possibly or like some massive bloated contract that would just ruin it for the next owner. Although it could be his just kicking out method, but I think he's kind of surrendered with the fact that there's just so much stuff against him that there's really no option for him at this point. Because like he even put his house up for sale in Maryland. So that's kind of
I just think trading for a big name quarterback and then selling the team and not being responsible for what happens next is a formula that has proven to work. The Broncos traded for Russell Wilson and then sold like a week later, and it added $500 million of value to that deal. Dan Snyder wants money. If he wants to chase money, you trade for Derek Carr because now you have a name and it increases the value of your franchise. Like it doesn't increase the value.
Wilson and Carr is a difference there.
Okay, but we're also here. This is where we're talking about. Like we got to think about how much these guys
buy money wherever you can.
I understand that it's like this whole like I mean you always want more money. But that man's already going to make so much profit off of this team.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot.
He's going to make so much money off of this
always
team.
Looking for more money.
It's good. I understand that, but it's going to be so much money that extra $500,000 isn't even going to mean anything.
$500 million, not thousand, 500 million.
Okay, but
it
like,
went from 4 to 4.5 B.
But I'm saying like, but we're talking about the fact of there's 999 or there's 100,000 million, however many millions in a billion. That I understand that it's like when you get up to those numbers, it's not like it seems like a lot, but it doesn't really do anything because it's just too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Dan Snyder's going to do, but I do think the fit is interesting.
I think the fit would be great because that's another team that has weapons, and conversely of the Saints has a young defense that's ready to start its prime. Ron Rivera wants to save his job. I mean,
it'll be interesting to see what they try to do. I think for me, Saints, obviously, I kind of feel like it's going to end up being the Saints because it's just what they do. They do this stuff. If it wasn't for the fact that the Colts seem unlikely to try to do this again, I would have not been surprised to see them do it because this is just also what they do. But luckily, I don't think that's the case.
What about Carolina?
That's actually what I was going to say. I think that if Frank Reich wants to, the situation would have to be Carr gets cut because no one will trade for him. The Panthers go to him and say, "Listen, we're going to give you a 1-year contract or maybe even a 2-year contract. This will help to try to help rebuild your value. It's going to be a prove it type of situation with a young team. We're going to draft maybe an Anthony Richardson, something like that, a guy who could use a little bit of time and just so they can season him a little bit. Go out there, try to rebuild your value. We'll try to make a run a little bit here with a new coach." It would make sense for a team that's trying to get back into that conversation in the playoffs and a team trying to build things with Frank Reich. I don't think it's worth trading for him, giving up assets, but I do think if he ends up hitting the market because of a cut, then it would make some sense because then you don't have to worry about his exact contract. You can work something else out. The draft capital won't be there. That would make, I think, a lot of sense for that team because I do not want to see. I know that people are like, "Oh, Sam Darnold didn't do too bad." He don't. I don't even want to talk to.
You know what? I was one of those people that said that, and I will retract that statement.
Yeah, listen, I don't need to see.
I have seen some film since then, and no. He does not need to be starting.
He's not even under contract. They would have to re-sign him. And
I don't.
Matt Corral's the only one under contract there.
Tony, you definitely seem to disagree with me there. I want to hear what you have to say about that with the Panthers.
Oh yeah, I hate that idea. Mainly because I live in Charlotte. I want the Panthers to be good. I don't want them to do
well. Fair enough. Well, this isn't meant to be. He's not supposed to be an answer, but
just based off of who they have brought into the building, where the state of their roster is, it is the perfect landing spot for a rookie. You've got Frank Reich and Josh McCown teaching this guy football. Like it is. You are bringing in CJ Stroud, and you are not entertaining any other ideas, especially not $40 million for Derek Carr.
So
because Derek Carr isn't the kind of guy who's going to train up your rookie quarterback. Like he's not that guy.
They probably have a decently late pick because they were one of the last teams to get
I
eliminated.
thought they were like 8th or 9th.
Yeah, no, they have the 9th overall pick, which is a and they also have a ton of picks in the mid rounds because of the Christian McCaffrey trade. They are very well positioned to do whatever the hell they want at quarterback.
So, because I don't think you get Stroud if you sit there. You could probably
listening to what you were saying,
Shane.
Yeah. If they go what you were saying, Shane, that's just the Tennessee Titans method.
Basically,
that's basically what they've attempted to do.
Well,
with
Grant,
Ryan
I think Richardson
Tannehill.
is a far better prospect.
Well,
still besides
yes,
the point.
because we're talking about the starter for a SEC team and not a starter for Liberty.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation, but yeah, like I think that would make some sense if Carolina wants to try to compete immediately, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's what their goal is, because I don't know if
they're already going to do that.
Well, yeah. Well, so what you do is literally what the
know.
Texans are doing. You bring in Derek Carr until if they decide to do Anthony Richardson once he's ready to start, and you just rely on that run game. And then you're like, hey, Derek Carr, can you make those throws every once in a while to Traylon Burks? Sweet, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
not
see
Traylon
what happens.
Burks, but DJ Moore.
Yeah, I know. But I think that in general, like there's a couple spots that Carr could go to, and I think have success and rebuild his value. It's just going to come down to, does he get traded, does he get cut and then added? I think the best thing would be for teams to just sit there and say, we're not giving up draft capital just to make the Raiders cut him. But I feel like the Saints would be the team most likely to go ahead and be like, we already.
What do they have to trade them? I don't.
They just got a first.
They just. Yeah, that's right. They just got stuff.
Oh, it wouldn't cost a first. It's going to be the Matt Ryan deal. It's going to be 2/3.
They have
yeah.
picks,
and hopefully it's not like an NBA trade deadline deal where he's sending like 6 second-round picks.
That's a whole other.
I personally think that whatever team ultimately decides they want Derek Carr, they should trade for him. I know that sounds ridiculous, but what is the value of a quarterback right now? We are talking about Daniel Jones and Geno Smith are very likely going to both get deals with term, with guarantees, looking at about 37.5 average per year. Like, this is just the cost. Would I rather have Derek Carr on the free market? His price is going to be driven up to like $45 million, or can I just lock him in at 40 for the next 2 years? In a contract that after this first year is very restructurable to be like long-term healthy. You need to trade for Derek Carr if you want Derek Carr. I don't let him hit the free market and drive his price up. Right now is the time to strike.
I guess it just depends on, like you said, how much money he'd actually end up getting offered, which with the way the quarterback contracts are, it's really hard to say how high it might go.
He would get more on the open market than his current contract is. So I think you got to trade for him.
Fair enough, but I think that'll wrap up everything else we're talking about. Now we definitely need to finally get into the game. It's been a long show, but we'll make sure we get into things here. Okay, so obviously
big show.
Yes, obviously. So Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl, Kelsey Bowl, Andy Reid Bowl, whatever you want to call it. A lot of fun. I've definitely enjoyed the content from the Kelsey.
The Black QB Bowl.
That as well. Yeah, absolutely. I do think that this was the matchup that was going to be the best for a Super Bowl that was possible. Like, I know, like, obviously the Niners and the Purdy story, had he not gotten hurt, that's fun and everything. Like, Burrow making a run back to back, that'd be cool. But, like, these teams were the best in the regular season, their conferences. They were the best teams overall. And now we get to see them play. And I think that it's really interesting, and we'll get into the matchups and everything else we want to talk about. But the Chiefs come in after the Tyreek Hill trade and everything else, being like, I don't know if they're going to be as good offensively, everything. Patrick Mahomes proves that he is the reason why that team is what it is and not anybody else. Kelsey obviously makes a huge difference. We'll get into talk about him too, of course. But he is the guy. And that is what makes this offense ultimately work. And especially work as well as it did. And I definitely have some numbers to go over, some things like that, but I do want to kind of get your guys' general consensus on how you're feeling about the game. If you think that this is the best matchup we could have gotten, like I said, what do you guys think kind of on that front? What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I agree. It's the best matchup. I think the Bengals could have come in and we would be similarly talking about how, this game's going to be freaking awesome. I don't think the 49ers could come into this game and have us talking. Like, I think the spread would be like at least 4 points going like the AFC team. Like, so
fair enough.
We got the right NFC team. I think it's a coin toss on whichever AFC team. This is the one I personally wanted to see because where the Bengals are a very just well-structured, well-rounded team, similar to the Eagles, the Chiefs are just a freaking juggernaut because of like 3 guys. And that's cool. This is the pure, like, build a perfect roster or have the best quarterback that has ever played football in the entire world. And so it's going to be an awesome game because of that. So, I think we got the right teams, and I think it's going to be a barn burner. I'm super excited for this game.
What do you think? Zach kind of agreeing with us there?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the playoffs, my coworkers know that I write about football and do a lot of football content. They're like, who's gonna be in the Super Bowl? I looked at all of them, was like Kansas City and Philadelphia, because Kansas City, the way that Patrick Mahomes has played this year, it seemed inevitable. I was worried about Cincinnati, I was worried about Buffalo, but those kind of they kind of shot themselves in the foot. Sorry, Tony.
Yeah, it's cool.
But
I've processed it by now.
oh yeah. So I mean but I mean it sucks for the NFC because I'm not gonna act like had Purdy not gotten hurt,
There's
they would
been a
have
lot
won
of
that
talk
game.
about it.
No, but I'm gonna say that it would have been closer. And
Of course.
and
it'd be close.
Oh yeah,
and
the
what
Eagles played a dog shit game. The 49ers could have won that.
Oh,
with the
and what
quarterback.
I do think ends up happening is if you get longer offensive drives, your defense doesn't tire out as quick, and then you don't get railed on like that. So, like, I'm not going to say that they win that game if Purdy doesn't get hurt, because I still think there's the opportunity for Purdy to put the ball in harm's way because his throws were suspect. But that's besides the point. This is two top-notch offenses and defenses going head to head. Both sides, one a little better than the other. And it's gonna be interesting to see who prevails because of the difference in calibers of the conferences, because you can make an argument that for one team, their numbers are a proven testament to the teams that they played, whereas for another team, it could be a bit of a glass house.
I think that's an interesting conversation because we've heard a lot of stuff in sports media and everything else, and we've been tracking that. I know I have. Like, there's a whole conversation about, yeah, like maybe would the Eagles have won if the Niners had Brock Purdy? I still think they would have. It would have been a 1-score game though, maybe opposed to like a 3 or 4-score game, obviously. So we'll never really know that, but it's not not the Eagles' fault that Purdy got hurt. It was just a great play by Reddick that got the ball out. Like, it just is what it is. Obviously, the Chiefs played a much tougher road to get here, and the Eagles played maybe one of the easiest of all time. But I think the thing you have to understand, or what people have to realize, is like you don't get to pick your opponents, right? The Eagles played who they played, and they dominated who they played almost across the board. There's a reason they did that. This team is not a fake team. They're not a fake super. Like, that's not how this works. Are they on the same level as the Chiefs? I think that's debatable, and we'll talk about that. But I do think that they 110% deserve to be here, and they've deserved to get to this point. It just does beg the question, because we didn't get to see them play a lot of the teams that the Chiefs got to play and the Chiefs had to get through to get here, is are they ready for the challenge the Chiefs are going to present, especially now that it seems like Patrick Mahomes is pretty much fully healthy from his ankle injury. Because the Bengals, they barely beat the Bengals, and it took a run, actually, ironically, from Mahomes to kind of get that to happen. But now you're going to get a more spry. Yeah, right, exactly. You're going to get a little bit more spry version of him. He's going to be more of a threat like he normally would be as far as on the move. Can they overcome that? And I think it's a question, like you said, Tony, too, of a team that is a better team overall. Like, they have a better roster down the board in a lot of positions. But does it make up the difference, even as great as Hurts has been this year? Does it make up the difference of having Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce? Like, is it enough? And I think it's a fair question, but I do want to get into kind of some of the numbers here with you guys. So, interesting couple notes before we get into talking about the different matchups, what we think we're going to see here. The Chiefs were number 1 in points and yards offensively for the first time since Patrick Mahomes' first MVP season in 2018. Despite Tyreek Hill leaving in a trade, despite all the things they dealt with, the kind of different revolving door of receivers at different times, they were number 1, scored the most points again, and had the most yards. Their rushing offense was kind of how they typically have been, where there's not a lot of volume there, but the efficiency is really good. I believe, looking at what I have here, they were, I think it was 8th in yards per attempt rushing. I have to double check that here. But again, they're very good at running the ball when they want to, right? They're able to do that, and they're able to do it at a pretty high clip.
And
will they? Yeah.
Clyde's Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Especially with Pacheco in there and everything else, they've done a really good job there. I do think that I don't know if they're going to lean on the run game much at all, even though the matchup would suggest, and we'll get to that more in a minute too. But the Eagles' defense, the passing game is where they've dominated, both in terms of pressure and interceptions and yards. It's been very, very difficult to throw on this team for all those factors. And we saw that's one of the reasons the Niners ended up in the position they were, because Purdy wasn't able to get protected. He's getting hit a lot early, takes that hit to the elbow, messes that up for them. Josh Johnson gets put on his back, he gets concussed. Like, a lot of pressure. And again, the Chiefs' offensive line is very good, but the Eagles' defensive line is the best in the NFL. And it's 70 sacks, 4 guys with 10 plus sacks. really hard to overcome. The cornerback duo is great. The secondary is awesome for them in general. Where they can get beat and where they were beat a lot of the time, and I think they had a run until the 49ers playoff game. I think they gave up over 100 yards rushing in like 8 or 9 consecutive games. The Eagles can be run on. And I do wonder, do the Chiefs try to take advantage of that, or do they just do what they always do until proven otherwise? I do think they're going to just play this like they would anyone else for the most part. But if it gets down in late in the game and the Eagles are down, can they get the Chiefs off the field if they want to run the ball on them? I think that's a big conversation to have about that. And I do want to start kind of what you guys think as well, just from what I talked about. The Chiefs offense versus Eagles defense, how you kind of see that playing out, and like what are you looking for to see kind of who's going to take that matchup for the most part? I'll go to Zach first.
I see. My thing with the Chiefs offense is not necessarily try to abuse the Philadelphia rushing defense. My thing about this game is do your thing, and I want to see Pacheco have a good game. Just with a standard whatever, because like we said, they don't run often. You don't all of a sudden just change the entire idea of what you do because you're coming up against a team that can be weak against the run. Then what you've done has gotten you to the Super Bowl. So what I'm hoping for is that they've maybe looked at some blocking schemes and maybe some stuff like that were utilized in the Commanders game, and they look at how that went. And I mean, not that they're the same, but Taylor Heineke and Patrick Mahomes have that propensity to run around in the pocket and do all that stuff, which I do think helped the Commanders a lot, because that's like one of the only real mobile quarterbacks that we saw them play this year besides Daniel Jones, but that's a little different. He just kind of runs the ball, not necessarily play extension. So like it's Patrick Mahomes. He has 2 MVPs. He's been to 5 straight AFC championships. It doesn't matter who has been the wide receivers on the team. The man dominates. Like, he is the best player most talented player to play the position of quarterback. Like, we have never seen anybody do what he is doing right now. And it's just really hard because as great as Jalen Hurts has been this year, you're talking about going up against the best player at the most important position in football. And they also have dudes on their defense. Like you've got Patrick Mahomes on that side, but then you've got Frank Clark, and you've got these dudes on the defensive line, Chris Jones, and that are also as monsters. Like, that's where they've got the big names at the right positions, and they've been able to cash it in. It's just, is Philadelphia's defense and roster set up to, like, even though it's like built more like concretely and soundly, can they overcome the fact that they're going up against like the top position dudes at their position at a few areas of the team?
Yeah, what do you think, Tony? Anything you want to add on the Chiefs offense versus Eagles defense conversation here?
Yeah, so I think, and this will be a theme for me across both of the matchups we're looking at here, is that offenses have a huge advantage in this game. The defenses are damn good. They are damn good. They are battle tested, although the Eagles defense not so much. But these offenses are set up to dismantle them, and that's how sports work. That's how football works. It's favored towards the offense. But I think this is going to be a story of offenses, and what both of these offenses do, it's just very mean. They're just these coordinators are just assholes in the fact that they will take your entire body of work and decide, I'm going to make sure this defense doesn't do anything they want to do. And they dictate. They dictate. Andy Reid is one of the best in the game at this, especially in-game adjustments. But coming off of a bye, he's just incredible at understanding everything the opposing defense wants to do and then putting them in stressful situations where they can't do said things. So we know what the Eagles defense is not battle tested, has struggled heavily against the good offenses they have played, and most importantly, suck at run defense. They are so bad at run defense. They have no answers because they don't have 3 linebackers that play. I talked about this in the NFC Championship game preview, but Shanahan was going to do everything in his power to get that 3rd linebacker on the field. because he could just run down the throat otherwise. Eagles put that third linebacker on the field, and then they want to pass over the top. That didn't come to fruition because they couldn't pass over the top. But this is going to be a full-on Andy Reid show of, hey, I'm going to put 3 tight ends and a running back on the field, and I'm going to have Justin Watson on the outside, and you are going to have to put 5 defensive linemen on the field. Otherwise, I'm going to run through your fucking face with Isaiah Pacheco, and he runs through people.
And he will.
So you either have to decide, okay, I am going to let Isaiah Pacheco run through my face, get 6 yards a carry, and never get the offense off the field, or we are going to have to bring in a nose tackle, try to stop that run, and now you have Patrick Mahomes throwing to 5 pass catchers against a team with only 6 coverage defenders, 2 of which are linebackers.
And someone will be open.
Exactly. You are going to get torn apart. You're either going to have to give up 6 yards per carry on the run and die a very slow, painful death, or you are going to get just thrown over the top of because you decide to go heavy. There's no winning against what Andy Reid is going to do to this defense. And like, it's a good defense. They got good players, but at the end of the day, you have Patrick Mahomes and the ability for him to dictate and do whatever the hell he wants. When he's on schedule, when he's doing what he wants, there's no stopping them. So you got to bring everything if you are Jonathan Gannon. Now, he's not a guy who changes his stripes. So like, he's going to run out his defense the way he wants to run out his defense. So we know what we're going to see, but they're just going to have to bring pressure. They're going to have to just blitz, bring pressure. Yeah. Try to get Mahomes down because there's nothing else you can do. If you let him have time, he'll dice you apart to his tight ends. If you stack the box, if you leave the box open, they're going to run through your face. There's no winning. It's just, you just try to get to Mahomes and try to blow up their plan. And it's going to be a failed effort, but like, that's your only hope on defense. And ultimately it's a success if you hold them to 31 or less points. And that you just got to hope your offense holds up.
I do think it's interesting because you mentioned about like Gannon and throwing the house at them. Like, I do think that at least early in the game, he's going to bring 4. He's not going to bring any blitzers. He's not going to do any of that. That's not what he does. He's been one of the least blitz-happy defensive coordinators of the past 2 years. The question is, if what I expect to happen, and it's the first quarter or so, and it's not working. They're not getting there fast enough, or Mahomes is evading it, whatever else. Does he switch it up mid-game? Does he see that, like, listen, we're not going to be able to get away with what we've done all year, which is just let our front 4 just wreak havoc? Is he going to be willing, or even really able, given who he kind of wants out on the field, able to bring 5, 6 guys occasionally? Because as much as that might help, it's probably going to just lead to even easier looks for Mahomes, though. Early on, he's going to be able to key on that. Him and Kelsey will get linked up, and he'll throw him a slant, and he'll run for 30 yards because there's no one there. Like it is kind of a lose-lose situation, like you said, Tony. You have to basically hope that they don't execute as well as they normally do, which, yeah, that's always possible, but it's not very likely. Obviously, you kind of have to hope that happens. You have to get turnovers, ideally. Like if they don't get at least a turnover, if not 2, I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep them from scoring too many points to win. And I think it's the problem for the Eagles is they ideally have to play their A game, and the Chiefs don't necessarily have to play their A game to win this game. That is kind of what I think might be the difference ultimately. Here we'll get more into like the other matchup of the Chiefs defense versus the Eagles offense, but it's just so hard. And we've seen teams get up big on the Chiefs at times, and they still can't take it home because the defense settles down for the Chiefs and the offense comes rolling in. And we all know that Houston Texans 24-0 debacle from a few years ago. Like, this is just what this team does. It's just so hard to deal with them. And I think that the Eagles, like I said, they just have to rely on their front 4 getting home. And if that doesn't work, it's got to be a turnover here or just a mistake by the Chiefs here. That's probably what's going to have to take if that's the case. I'd like to see the Chiefs honestly kind of just come out and like maybe do a couple draws, do some funny runs to see what they can get away with in that run game. If they can break off a couple big runs or something like that, that'll really put the Eagles behind the 8 ball, because now you have to stop the run like immediately or else you're going to get completely bowled over. And that's when Patrick Mahomes comes out and him and Kelsey have a good time. So going to be interesting to see what the Eagles try to do differently if their normal strategy doesn't have success early on. I do want to get into the defense for the Chiefs versus the Eagles offense. I think that's a little bit more interesting overall, just because with the Chiefs offense is kind of just like we said, you hope for the best, and hopefully you could stop one or other of
Steve
it.
Spagnuolo's a postseason miracle man.
He is.
You just hope he brings his A game.
Exactly. If he does, I think it's gonna be really hard. For
They've got the dudes. You just hope that it all comes together.
Yeah. With the Chiefs defense, just gonna give you some numbers here. So they finished 16th in points and 11th in yards overall. So kind of middle of the pack, but again, this is what we expect from this team in the regular season. They're not, super talented overall. Like they have some really good players, but they're not this huge, like cohesive unit that some of the Eagles and Niners, like those defenses are. But they get the job done. Definitely not bad at all. They gave up the most touchdowns to the air in the NFL this year, which is a little bit surprising to me, but they also gave up only 5.6 yards per attempt, which is a full half yard lower than the worst quarterback average, which was Kyler Murray at 6.1. So they dink and dunk, or they make them dink and dunk, but they do get touchdowns through the air that way. So it's a little bit interesting how that dynamic plays out. Honestly, because like touchdowns can be a little bit weird with like the numbers that you give up there. So I'm looking more at that 5.6 yards attempt. I do wonder, can the Eagles, because their big thing obviously this year has been Hurts' passing game down the field has been so much better with AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Like that's been a huge improvement for them. Can they get some of those big chunk plays down the field against a team that clearly just doesn't allow a lot of that, with their yards per attempt there? That's going to be, I think, a big way that they can get into this game and get some points, is get some of those big plays that they've been getting this year through the air. Because Hurts has improved a lot as a passer. I'm not going to say that he has to get those big plays to be successful, but they've helped them so much in some of these games where they just get a quick strike and just put the other team behind the 8 ball. That's going to be big. The run defense for the Chiefs also well above average. 15th in yards per attempt allowed, so not too great, but overall top 10 in yards allowed and touchdowns allowed. Like they're not going to be easily exploitable there, I don't think. Even though the Eagles offense, which again I want to get into, they were third in points and third in yards again. So this is top 3 offense, really good throughout the year. That was with Hurts missing some time as well. Minshew having to go in there. His improvement as a passer, talking about Hurts here, that's I think the biggest factor in this game is how much can he get done to the air against, again, a team that doesn't really give up a lot of big plays? Can he create a couple big plays, whether that's on the run, getting guys to open down the field, just schemed up stuff that has been really good this year by Sirianni, Steichen? And if they can't, what kind of passing offense are they going to rely on? Then is it going to be more of the shorter stuff to Goddard, some stuff over the middle to Devontae, maybe some AJ Brown on slants? Basically, like I think that he really has to go pretty much toe to toe with Mahomes in the air if they want to have a really good chance of winning, because they're as good as their rushing offenses. They're first in touchdowns, fifth in yards total, really good yards per attempt. It's just I don't know if they're going to be able to rely on it as much as they have in the past to win this game. It's just really hard to do that against the Chiefs. So, what do you think for this one, Tony?
Yeah. So, same kind of story. I think the offense has an advantage here, especially when you look at the on paper matchup. Like the Eagles have just star power all across the offensive roster, and the Chiefs are playing 4 rookie DBs. Maybe L'Jarius Sneed comes back healthy,
Maybe,
but then 3 rookie DBs and young linebackers and kind of a patchwork defensive line with one just mega superstar and then Frank Clark, who happens to show up in the playoffs. But on paper, yeah, Eagles offense, big time advantage. Now you look at the coaches, the godfather of playoff defense, Steve Spagnuolo, an absolute legend with it. He knows what he's going to be doing in this game. He's going to be throwing haymakers all night long, going to be blitzing the ever-living shit out of Jalen Hurts. Shane Steichen, really, really good at doing that Andy Reid thing where he feels out for the first quarter, really just kind of like scripted drives. He's teasing them. He's feeling them out. He's like, hey, I do this. What are you guys going to do? All right, I'm coming back to that later. So it's going to be a really interesting chess match between the two of them. And it's going to be funny because Shane Steichen plays chess. He is playing like very calculated moves. Everything is very intentional. Steve Spagnuolo is the guy who doesn't play chess, but he knows that if he punches the guy across in the face across the board from him, that guy's going to be thrown off of his game and he might have a chance to win. So he is going to be blitzing the ever living shit out of them. Like what the Eagles offense does so well is it puts you in stress. It makes it hard to do anything on defense because even if your players make the right decisions, Jalen Hurts has an out.
Just out athlete you.
He reads the end and maybe he keeps it and runs. Maybe he hands it off. If he keeps it, maybe he throws it to AJ Brown. Maybe he throws it to Devontae Smith. Like it is just so well designed in that there's an out at every step and the defense can't do anything right, even if they're making good decisions. But Steve Spagnuolo is going to say, okay, you guys are very methodical. You guys know exactly what you want to do. You have outs built into every play you run. You know what you don't have an out from? Me sending everybody at you immediately and you having to make a panicked decision with no time to think. And that is where the inexperience of Jalen Hurts is going to come into play. At some point, they are going to just launch an all-out blitz that makes him pause and think, should I hold on to this ball? Should I hand it off? And it's going to take too long, and he's going to get hit, and the ball is going to come out. Or it's going to be he decides to keep it, and he runs out, and he has to make a bad throw into coverage. Or it's going to be the blitz is going to create chaos that will allow the Chiefs the opportunity to capitalize on mistakes. It force them into situations that are stressful, and then hope that you get the good side of it. You're going to lose 90% of the reps. Both defenses are going to lose 90% of the reps. And it's just a matter of what happens on that other 10% that's going to dictate this game. I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to cook up something that makes the inexperience of the Eagles offense a problem. And ultimately, that's like kind of where I think this game is going to be decided, is in that chess match right there. Is just, how do you react when you're completely thrown off schedule? And when you're inexperienced, you might not have that answer yet. So I think the Eagles offense is going to be able to put up points, but Chiefs defense is going to make their lives much more difficult than the Eagles defense is going to make Patrick Mahomes' life.
Fair enough. What do you think, Zach? Anything you want to add there?
Yeah. So before I get in, one question. So outside of their 3 IR people, the Chiefs do not have any injuries.
Everybody's healthy on both teams.
Everybody is healthy.
Covey is the only questionable tag for the
Time out. So Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill are not rookies, right? Like they're listed as the starters for the Chiefs secondary.
Oh, okay.
What?
I've been talking about four rookies for weeks now. What the hell?
Justin Reed was drafted in 2018, and Juan Thornhill was drafted in 2019. Because I only know Thornhill specifically because he played at UVA, and I
know both of those guys are. I thought they were both on IR.
Oh yeah, ESPN just has them listed as the starters on the depth chart, and like all the other IR guys. So I mean, maybe they're not like on the like full designation. I don't know. That's why I was confused, because I was like, wait. What do you mean they're not playing? This says that they're not injured. Because they only, even with the injuries on ESPN, they only have the 3 IR designations from the entire season. And that's Justin Ross.
Right, okay, sorry. I know that Dan Bush and Brian Cook have been playing a whole hell of a lot. So
because I know
field for snaps.
And McDuffie will definitely be on the field. Because I was going to say, because I'm looking at Jalen
Watson,
chart.
Trent McDuffie. That I was thinking Deion Bush and what's his face, Cook.
Yeah, that's because I was looking at the depth chart before you started, and I'm like, oh, this is a solid secondary. Like, man, they could do. And then you were like the rookies, and I was like, okay, there's something not connecting here with me. So, anyways, no, the Eagles offense is interesting because like they've played some good defenses, but it's gonna be they've ended up not having to necessarily put their foot on the pedal against other offenses that they have played. That do they have that, like, if they start to go down, do they have that sense of urgency of like, oh no, if we don't score on this drive, like we're not going to be able to catch back up? Because as we talked about with the Chiefs, they've shown us that it almost doesn't matter how much they're down. They can come back from a lot. How many points did the Eagles score against the Saints? 10? Right? Wasn't that 13-10?
Or something like that. I can't.
You're talking like when Jalen Hurts was out.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but yeah. But like, still, the offense looked fine against Dallas. Against Dallas,
part, yeah. Other than a couple of turnovers, but just throwing this out here. Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill both played in the last playoff game, so they should be.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Just throwing it out.
Okay. So so they're right there. I mean, like they're not bad by any stretch, the Chiefs defense. And like we're talking about, like, yes, Jalen Hurts is shown to be a great quarterback so far, and he's making the improvements that he needs to make. But experience is a big thing. He does probably have a leg up, and I'm not going to say over Mahomes, but over like your standard quarterback mental wise with his situation in college. And like, there's really nothing else that could have happened to anybody else that could prepare you like that.
Yeah.
But also he's got to go up against an NFL defense, and we're not talking about having you're just getting humbled a bit and being sat because they started somebody else. We're talking about like, oh no, you're going to get on the ground. Like Tony said, there's going to be a time in the game where like not Lou. Oh my gosh, I'm all mixed up right now. Where Steve Spagnuolo just like puts his finger in his mouth, goes 66 degrees. 3 minutes left in the second half. Yeah, unleash the blitz, and they're just going to go. And then it's just going to happen. So like, I'm interested to see how they approach it because of how much everybody's talked about the Eagles defense, or not the Eagles defense. I mean, they talked about the Eagles defense, but everybody's talked about the Eagles offense this year. And we've talked about them being so methodical. Can the spontaneity of the Chiefs on seemingly both sides of the football be enough to just throw them off of just like how they just tend to run? Like they set up their game script and they go. There is no deviating from that game script. Like we're going to do what that situation calls for. I don't care if whatever hasn't been working for the past 2 quarters. No, this is what the Eagles do. This is what we do. It's all, I've been getting so much Eagles like promo because I work at Wawa and like they're based in Philly.
Yeah,
I had to lie about what I love the most about the Philadelphia Eagles because I was trying to get a Wawa Philadelphia like combo shirt.
Nice.
So that kind of hurt. But it's I have a feeling that in my score, I mean, I have a feeling, like you said, Tony, it's going to be high scoring. I do think there's a chance that if it's not high scoring, either one of these defenses just completely figures out the other and just dismantles them completely. And that's, for me, is if that happens, it's going to be the Chiefs defense just completely just figuring out the Eagle shtick and letting Patrick Mahomes just let loose and get revenge for what happened a few years ago when they played the Buccaneers. So like, I just, these two teams, like, yeah, their defenses are great, but as we've been saying throughout this whole thing, the NFL has built itself up to be an offensive league. And there's just so many things that stand in the way of a really, really, really great defense from having that big of an impact. In the past, we've seen it more so that the offenses aren't up to par in the Super Bowl, and it's just been those stellar defenses that have taken over because nobody can do anything. And I can't see that being the case today for either offense or tomorrow. But
yeah, I do think it's going to be really interesting overall just to see how these defenses try to attack these offenses because of how much of an advantage they really do have ultimately, like you said, Tony, especially. It's going to be a challenge. I do think just looking at it, the Chiefs defense does have, I think, a better chance naturally just because of, one, you're dealing with Patrick Mahomes on their side, and two, against Spagnuolo's done this in the past. He has this kind of track record of doing stuff like this. So last thing I want to do before we let things go here, I want to get you guys just 3 keys for both teams if they want to win the game. I'll start things off, let you guys kind of think about it for a minute. For me, for the Chiefs, number one thing is play your game. If you can play the game that you've always done, do what you've always done offensively, if you can dictate the pace of the game with that and just, not make them force you into doing anything that you don't want to do, you're very likely going to put up 30 plus and you're going to win the game. It's pretty much as simple as that. Other thing is defensively, do not let the Eagles get those big plays in the passing game that has helped them really get out to leads and help them, allow their defense to really hunt you on pass rush. That's a really big thing because as good as the Chiefs offensive line can be, this Eagles defensive line is ferocious, and even without bringing blitzers, they can definitely get to you. So don't let them get out to an early lead with those big plays. If you can avoid that, it should definitely help. Last thing is you have to get. I think you have to get at least one turnover just to help your defense out a little bit here. Like the defense, help the offense out a little bit. Make sure the Eagles don't just have these long methodical drives. Force them into a spot where they have to make a bad decision, like you said with the blitz with Spagnuolo. If you can get a couple of those, it's going to make the offense even that much more comfortable, feel better about what the situation the game is. Going to make things a lot easier for the Eagles. This is really important. You absolutely have to, assuming someone does turn the ball over, you have to win the turnover battle. If you give the ball up to the Chiefs more than once or twice, it's not going to happen. You're not going to win the game. You have to make good decisions. If Spagnuolo's bringing blitz, you have to have counters for that. Hurts has to be aware that he's playing Spagnuolo and that he has to get the ball out quick if he sees guys coming. Have to have that built in the offense. I'm sure Sirianni understands that. Like he's smart enough to know that they have to have some checks in there, make sure Hurts isn't making blind decisions, bad decisions out of nowhere. It's a big thing. They have to also, the number 2 thing for them, you have to try to dictate the pace of this game. You have to play your game as well, just how I said the Chiefs have to. If you can run the ball effectively, if you can let Hurts kind of get into his bag and do some of the stuff in the run game he does, and get some of those big plays, like I mentioned, that's going to be huge for them. They need to keep the Chiefs both off the field and also, not allowing them to do what they have done really for years now with Mahomes and just kind of dictate pace of play. And the last thing, and I think the biggest thing, is your coaches have to bring their A game because you are behind the 8 ball automatically with Andy Reid as the coach on the other side of you. Everything that Sirianni does decision-wise, his coaches on offense and defense, everything has to be crisp, perfect, pretty much if they want to have a chance to outcoach the Chiefs. Because, again, it's just really hard to outcoach a team that right now, at least, I think has the best coach in the NFL at this particular moment of time, at least. That's what I have for you. Anyone you guys want to add anything different? Of course, obviously, let's go to Zach here. What do you think is the biggest things for them?
For Kansas City, I think a big thing will be keeping Jalen Hurts on uncomfortable and on his toes, because they've been too comfortable all year. I mean, it's what we just talked about. They haven't necessarily they've had a couple of scares and a couple of losses, but really they've kind of skated through. So Steve Spagnuolo coming in and having a solid game. I mean, not necessarily a solid game plan, but just knowing what he does and keeping Hurts on his toes and uneasy. That's going to be the best for the Kansas City defense. For Philadelphia, you have to contain Patrick Mahomes. I know that they have a fantastic pass defense, and I know they get pressure, but you cannot let him extend plays, because there are countless videos and countless highlights of what happens when a defense lets Patrick Mahomes escape from the pocket or escape from a diving defender's grasps. And 9 times out of 10, the results are not good. And I'm even counting some of the 9 times out of 10 when he's in the air sideways and throws an incomplete pass, because that still is an incredible play. So you cannot give Patrick Mahomes extra time. If you have the ability to take him down, you have to take him down. You treat him like a ball carrier. You had I know that everybody's afraid of roughing the passer right now and hitting quarterbacks, but the defensive coordinator and Nick Sirianni are literally just all week drilling into these defensive players. You take the cleanest and most assured shot and any chance you get, because if you miss, he will make you pay for it. There is no other option. And then my other big one for the Chiefs was Pacheco. I think if Pacheco has a big game and is able to take some of the pressure off of Mahomes, because the Eagles are forced to worry about the run, that could be game, set, match for Philadelphia, because you give Patrick Mahomes some breathing space and he's going to take every single inch, every single micro molecule of oxygen that is left.
What do you think, Tony? You want to add anything to the Chiefs here?
Yeah. Well, so I did find out Juan Thornhill and Justin Reed both playing. I don't know. The site I was looking at showed that they were not on the roster at all, not taking any snaps, but they played 100% of the snaps at safety. So
well,
that's what I said. Yeah, that's what I thought.
You're not wrong, because I definitely heard that. I definitely heard that throughout the playoffs, and that they were playing.
There's going to be 4 rookie defensive backs playing a large percentage of snaps. You're going to have Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, and Brian Cook all playing at least 50% of the snaps, because that's how it's hashed out. But not as bad as I originally said. Sorry, but
although McDuffie is a starter, so he's going to be
legitimately
but keys for the Chiefs, I think it's very simple. Is exactly what I said. You put heavy personnel on the field and make the Eagles choose how they die. It's not going to be difficult to do. You put your 3 tight ends out. You get Travis Kelce, Jody Fortson, and Noah Gray. You throw Blake Bell out there for all I care. You put these tight ends on the field. It does not matter how good they are. Why not?
Give us a good Donatari Poe jump pass.
Yeah, there you go.
Honestly, I want to see Chris Jones score a touchdown.
That'd be amazing.
But I think you get those guys out there. You get Linval Joseph or Jordan Davis on the field, and now you have dictated this game. You have won this game because of that. You are good enough where you force them into that decision and you find a winning strategy. I guess for the Chiefs defense, like I said, it just blitz the hell out of them. That's the key. Just blitz, and just hope for the best. Try to not be outscored.
Yeah. Anything you want to add for the Eagles as far as they got to do?
Yes. Hope. Yeah, it sucks because like, damn, best regular season team, been dominating teams through the playoffs. They're perfectly built. They are a team worthy of winning the Super Bowl, and then here they go up against the best quarterback in the world, and you're gonna find out what is enough. I think they have chances. Like, start throwing up prayers to AJ Brown. We didn't really talk about him, but he's gonna be an X factor because, like I said,
they need the deep passing game
Jalen
to work.
Watson, Trent McDuffie, just any of those guys can't hang. If you throw up enough go balls to AJ Brown, he's going to come down with him. He's going to have a chance to make spectacular plays. So I think lean on your stars. As much as you are a well-rounded roster, lean on your stars if you're the Eagles, and all it takes is a couple of those plays to hit for things to really break open. And that's kind of what you got to hope for. You got to live on that tough edge of going all in on risky plays.
Yeah, I do think, again, the deep passing game is going to be a really big part of it. If they can get a couple of those, it could really swing the game just because of how much those can really swing momentum if you're a believer in that, and also just more so just giving the Eagles a little bit of breathing room and making the Chiefs go out there and answer and actually at least put a little bit of pressure on Mahomes and Chiefs offense. Anything you want to add for the Eagles, Zach?
Contain Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of.
That's
I do
easy.
think it's going to be.
That was my big key for the Eagles, really, because I mean,
like
the Eagles offense. I mean, really, there's no other thing for me for them than just do what you've done all season, because like it's worked. I just hope it continues to work. I mean, you touched on the turnover thing. You can't give the Chiefs extra opportunities. That's the only thing that will plague Philadelphia if that happens. But like when we get to scores, you're gonna see like I don't see much defensive. I'm hoping for a high scoring game. Let's just
it'll be a lot of fun if that happens. But yeah, okay, if that's everything you guys want to add, then yeah, last thing we're gonna do here is our final predictions of the year score wise.
Oh, were we gonna do the Kelsey versus Kelsey? I didn't know if we want to talk. There was something I wanted to add because I didn't know we were going to bring that up, because I've seen this conversation going around. And it's not about Jason, it's about Travis. Okay. Where is he in your tight end rank, like hierarchy of like top 5 top all-time tight ends? 2?
Yeah. Who is not better than Gronk, but
okay. So this is very interesting. Because I have him at 2, but I have somebody else at number 1. That's not Gronk.
Okay.
Name names. What you got?
Tony. I have Tony Gonzalez.
All right. That's fair. I think legacy argument gets him there. What Gronk was doing at his peak, it was Travis Kelce, but he was also Trent Williams. Like it was.
Yeah.
It took the best of what any tight end has ever done and added the best blocking that anybody has ever done. So I give Gronk the credit there, but I think that's probably the top 3 that makes sense.
Yeah.
For me, it's so like Gronk's an interesting conversation. Gronk's an interesting conversation. The reason I say that is because like if you care about longevity a lot, which I think when we're talking about the best players, it becomes less of an argument, because we're talking about best, not most productive, not this or that, right? And I think there's a lot of times where there's an overlap there. Like I think Gonzalez and Kelce ultimately, especially if he plays a couple more years, they're going to be in that category of like not only were they some of the best, but they also did it longer than other people maybe around them. Gronk, I think, is the most talented maybe we've ever seen, for sure. I think that because of the fact that he had the Super Bowl success as well with the Patriots and the individual success, like it kind of puts him in the same category as like, I don't know if I necessarily believe in for a different reason. Like I don't necessarily believe that Tom Brady's the best quarterback, the most accomplished quarterback. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference between those two things. I think Gronk is a closer combination of both of those things because of how talented he was individually. But I think Kelce, for me, it's like he's either 2 or 3, and it depends if you think he's past Gonzalez. I think at this point, I would probably lean towards Kelce just because of the team success is helping him a little bit too, as far as greatness is concerned. But Gonzalez is really good, and him also being a Chief for most of his career makes it interesting too. The Chiefs could have probably have at this point, you could say 2 of the 3 best tight ends as far as players.
Yeah, I mean, I just if he continues on this stretch of what he's doing for like 2, 3, 4 more years, I mean,
he'll be the best because of the fact of his numbers will be so overwhelming, and he'll also have a lot of the same individual and team success that Gronk had, especially if the Chiefs keep this up. it'll be a fun conversation. But I think if
Oh,
we're just
yeah.
talking about talent wise, I'll take Gronk, but Kelsey's
And
getting up there. So
something I always like to do to like find perspective in these like debates is just I'm starting a franchise. I'm buying in on one of these guys in their rookie year. Who do I want? It's Gronk all day, and it's not even close.
I disagree with
Travis
that.
Kelce is a wide receiver. Gronk.
So my
Gronk
problem
is,
with Gronk is if I already know what I'm getting in Gronk, I know that he's going to miss a lot of time. I know he's going to be super impactful when he plays, but I'm getting Kelsey for over a decade of consistency, and I know, and he's so good for a quarterback, no matter who he is, because of the way he plays and how smart he is. I don't know if it's is clear because I mean, obviously, like Gronk is more talented. Like I'm going to tell you right now, he's definitely more talented. But if we're talking about building a franchise, like I care a lot about if you're talking about two all-time greats, consistency is going to matter a lot to me. Like it is, because if you already know what these guys turn out to be and look like, Kelsey's not missed very much time at all than really his rookie season. And he's been so good for what Mahomes has needed and what they do offensively. And yeah, they center their offense around Gronk to a certain degree with the Patriots, but he was relying most on overwhelming talent opposed to true just consistency a lot of the time. And the injuries and the way his body kind of broke down, it does kind of put a hamper on like what he could have been, because he could have put this to bed a long time ago if he didn't miss so much time due to back injuries.
if he played the number of seasons he played
exactly.
and played every game in those seasons, he would be top.
There'd be no
of
debate.
the
Yeah, there'd be no
every
debate at all.
I want the
I get
best
what you're
player
saying,
on the
though.
field
I
at
get
any
what you're
given
saying,
time,
though,
and
Tony.
that is
That's
Robert
why
Gronkowski.
that's why this question is always amazing, because everybody has a different definition of what like the qualifying factors for
I do
best
get what
are.
you mean, though, Tony, for sure. I do understand where you're coming from. It's just like
Hey,
it's an
play
interesting
the position. Well, Travis Kelce, where does he rank among all-time wide receivers? Because he ain't no tight end.
Well, okay. Well, that's
How I don't recall this, but I'm trying to make a comparison. How was Antonio Gates blocking? Was he a good blocker?
He was never great.
He
but
blocked his size. Just the fact that he was the size that he was and where he played on the field, like, was blocking.
I was gonna say that was Gronk just like a more athletic and talented Antonio Gates, like just like the best of both worlds of like you've got the best blocker and you've got a amazing
Gronk's blocking,
receiver.
especially even late in his career, was very important for especially the Bucs team that went to the Super Bowl. Like he wasn't the same receiver.
Best blocking tight end of all time.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Also,
he threw dudes out of the club a lot of times. Yeah, yeah. So it's a fun conversation. But I think Kelsey's definitely up there. And I this is a good question before we actually end off as well too. Do we think? Obviously, I don't think this is a question for Travis. Do you think Jason hangs it up if they win? Do you think he quits?
Yeah, he was very involved.
Do you think he might anyway? Either way,
I think it's a serious consideration. Yeah, he was so heavily involved in drafting his replacement.
Yes,
he was the deciding vote on who they drafted to be his replacement. Yeah. Nobody does that unless they're like, yes, I see a path to retirement. And so like maybe his original plan was another couple years and let Cam Jurgens grow under him, but being in the Super Bowl, playing against his brother, I think this is his last game.
It's very possible. I do think it's very possible.
And it's definitely Lane Johnson's last game. So I feel like they'd want to go out together.
Oh, really? Then, I didn't hear anything
about that. Here's this. If that happens,
well, I mean, the man tore his groin and he's about to play on it and he's old. I can't imagine him wanting to gear up.
They have to cash in on this, because then that's two massive pieces of the offense because like this was another.
They had 2 first-round picks to deal with that.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, you're talking about 2 players that were like sustained success as opposed to taking Hall of Famers, yeah, and then taking the crapshoot on a draft pick.
With the Eagles, it might not be crapshoot.
This is yeah, but this is another very interesting conversation about how difficult it is to get back to a Super Bowl, because like the Bengals came close, but like it's the way that roster formation works now in the NFL. It's incredibly difficult because your championship caliber roster can all of a sudden turn upside down in one offseason. Look at the Rams. It's very interesting. So what's the typical lifespan for a NFL offensive lineman? Because I mean, Kelsey was drafted in 2011. That's a lot of mileage.
Great one's a decade. Past that,
well,
it's pretty.
Yeah, Joe Thomas went what, like 9 years? Like
he went 10. He had 10 years, and then he was.
But they were both drafted in the same year.
But he also played 10 consecutive years without missing a snap until his last season. So like that's also a factor in there. But
Yeah. So I mean, that's what 2011. So you play that season. That's 12 seasons. That's
Yeah.
well. The
And
next year would be 12. Next year would be 12.
they've already both won a Super Bowl. They're appearing
Mhm.
in their second Super Bowl. I
Yeah.
think
Well,
regardless of result, they both
third for Travis, but yeah,
oh,
I think it's
I was
gonna
talking
be.
about Jason
And
and
Lane
Lane
and
Johnson.
Lane.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lane Johnson, yeah, this will be the
Yeah.
second. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, but I do want to, just so we can get out of here, let everybody go. Let's finish up here with, again, just our predictions here. I think it's going to be pretty across the board as far as like the total points here. I think we're going to be pretty high up there. To just give everybody an idea. So right now, spreads, I'm looking at FanDuel's right now, just throwing that out there as well. I'm looking at -1.5 for the Eagles right now is the line for them.
That's pretty much stayed consistent the entire 2 weeks.
The
I don't think it's
over-under is
changing.
50.5, which I
That has
think
gone down a half a point.
it has, yeah. So that still feels low, but I kind of understand. So that's kind of what Vegas is looking at. I think we're both going to be, or all three of us going to be a little bit higher on the over/under, I imagine. I want to go to Tony here first. What do you have for me for prediction?
Yeah, I disagree with Vegas on this. I think this is a super high scoring one.
Yeah.
I already bet both teams over 24.5, and that was at like plus 275. I'm probably going to grab both teams over 29.5 because I think they both get to the 30s.
Wow, that'd be fun.
Ultimately, I'm going to say 37-33 Kansas City Chiefs win it. I just for all the reasons we've talked about, the offenses are going to be firing, and I think we're going to see a slow first quarter where they're really feeling each other out because both of these offensive coordinators do that. But then somebody's going to throw a punch, and we're just going to see the floodgates open, and it's going to be just like deep shot to AJ Brown, like big chunk play to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like just back and forth, teams going for gold. And so, yeah, I think it's going to get real high scoring real quick.
Definitely be a really fun Super Bowl to watch. It'd be definitely a nice change of pace compared to the last couple ones. I feel like, especially I just want to go back to this real quick. The Patriots Rams Super Bowl. Can we all just just forget that one?
No, I don't want to
pretend that one doesn't exist. Okay, because like there might be more points scored in the first two. There might be more points scored in the first 3 drives of this game than there was in that entire game.
Who was MVP in that? That was Cooper Kupp.
Brady.
Well, the Patriots won. So.
Oh wait. Oh. I'm thinking of the
Bengals,
I'm thinking
Rams?
of last year. I'm thinking of last year. Yeah.
That was Cooper.
I forget who the MVP of it doesn't. Julian Edelman. I think maybe.
I think I thought it was Brady.
Was it Edelman? If I'm right, I'm just
I'll
throw that
out
out there that I shouldn't know that, but I do. Anyway.
It was Julian Edelman.
All right, cool. Anyway,
that's because that was when the whole Julian Edelman to the Hall of Fame conversation.
Oh yeah.
All right. Sorry. Well, give me your prediction then. Here, Zach.
Yeah. I don't have it quite as high scoring. I still have it high scoring. I still have it over the over. I have Kansas City winning 30-28. Game script. They both score a touchdown late. What's their names? The Eagles go down and score a touchdown to make it 28-23. And Patrick Mahomes gets one more chance to ice the game and goes down, scores that touchdown, and maybe it'll be to Travis Kelce. Who knows? That I won't go too far into, but 30-28. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. And I mean, that's still a much more considerable amount of offensive action than we have seen in the past few years. So I will absolutely take that, because what I'm not expecting is the periods of just dead time that we've had the past few years, because I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to get whether they're scoring or not, you're going to get some good 6-7 play drives. You're going to get some plays here and there. Somebody's going to bust a good run. Somebody's going to get a good pass. I don't see these two teams coming into this game and just getting into a defensive stalwart, because the offenses have too much talent. There's just too much talent on both offenses to have them do nothing. So yeah, 30-28 Kansas City. Philadelphia is going to put up a hell of a fight, but it's going to be a fantastic Super Bowl. And I will say this in case anybody's like, oh, well, the Super Bowls have been close. Just because a game is close doesn't mean it's good.
There is a difference. Yes.
There's a very big difference, because 13-10 is not good.
No, it's just close. Yeah, so I will say, actually, the same path as you, Zach, in terms of total points, but I have 31-27 Chiefs winning over the Eagles. I think that the Eagles will get one more opportunity late in the game to try to go down and win with a touchdown, and they just won't be able to quite get it done. I think it's
They'll
going to be
kick the
very,
field
very
goal.
good. Yeah, I think it'll be very,
Horrendous
very,
field
very
goal.
good. Very, very good game. But we're really excited for it. I do.
At least
think
then
we're
it's
gonna get that.
31-30.
All right,
Looks
well,
better.
This just means we have.
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to put analytic conversation in the backlog for episodes of the off season now. Anyway, that's gonna do it for us this week for the last week of the season. We will try to be back here either next week or we'll see if we want to take a break or not. But we will be back with off season stuff. Gonna go through everything
Oh,
like
definitely.
that. A lot of fun draft stuff. Occasionally, we'll probably talk a little bit about all that good stuff. It'll be a lot of fun. So
Tomorrow may be the Super Bowl and the end of the NFL season, but the XFL and USFL are right around the corner,
there we
baby.
go. Boom.
Hey,
I will not partake in any discussion about those.
I know you.
Oh,
won't.
come
I know
on,
you won't.
come
I know
on.
Tony's not about that.
Honestly, was not that bad. I had to cover the.
You
no.
never want to start a conversation. Honestly, it wasn't that
Well,
bad.
okay,
That's
because
never
it has an awful reputation because everybody's just like, oh,
Brawl.
it's about money. But I actually had to cover the USFL last year, and it is a bunch of dudes out there who like want nothing more than to play football.
Oh, I love
and
that
they're getting that.
It's
That's what I love the most about it is you're giving people and players who literally spent so much time in their lives doing this one thing, and then all of a sudden it was just like, oh crap. And you have some players who made it to the play. Cavante Turpin was on the Cowboys, and it is a place that the XFL is going to get used by the NFL as a like development program because they've actually signed some stuff back and forth. But it's gonna be here to stay.
I enjoy watching it. I just refuse to speak about it.
Yeah.
I will not put in the time to formulate thoughts about it. Like
more football.
Seattle Sea Dragons, let's go, baby.
More football is always good football, so I'll take it. But we'll see how that goes. But like I said, they'll do it for us this week. Definitely check out. We'll put some more stuff out here in the next couple of weeks about the offseason stuff. We'll get that started. But thanks for joining me, guys. Enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow. Definitely gonna have a good time watching that. I was gonna have a Super Bowl party, but people are busy, so I'm just gonna probably sit there, probably in some sort of pajamas and sit there and watch the game. That's probably what I'll be doing.
Sometimes that's honestly the better decision.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be totally fine. So, but thanks for watching, everybody. See you next week or whenever we can read back up.